Sometimes the people we love the most can take us for granted. This is the story of Linda, a 72-year-old mother from Colorado, who gave everything she had to her only son and his new bride. She cooked for them, cleaned for them, and carried the weight of their happiness on her shoulders. But on one unforgettable night, just when she thought she was part of their joy, she overheard something that broke her heart into pieces. What happened next is not just a story about pain, it's about courage, dignity, and the power of finally saying no. So sit back, listen closely, and let me take you through Linda's journey. A journey that proves it's never too late to stand up for yourself. Welcome to Voice of Granny. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and share with friends. Also comment where you watching this story from. My name is Linda and I have lived in Colorado all my life. I am 72 years old, a widow, and a mother to one son, Daniel. People in town know me as the woman who always bakes pies for church events, who remembers birthdays even when no one else does, and who never says no when asked for help. That's how I've always been. Always giving, always serving, always putting myself last. I didn't mind it, not really. Or at least I told myself I didn't. After my husband, Charles, passed away from a heart attack 15 years ago, Daniel became my whole world. I poured all my love and energy into him. I wanted to be the kind of mother who showed love not with fancy gifts or money, but with actions. Making sure his clothes were ironed when he was younger, his favorite meals ready when he came home from college, and later, that his new apartment in Denver was spotless whenever I came to visit. When Daniel told me he had met someone, Sarah, a young woman with long brown hair and a smile that seemed to light up every room, I was overjoyed. I prayed that she would love him the way I did, that she would bring him the happiness I always wanted for him. Sarah was kind to me in the beginning. She hugged me when we first met, told me how glad she was that I was part of her life, and said she wanted us to be close. And oh, how my heart swelled at that. You see, for a widow like me, the thought of gaining a daughter was a blessing. I had always wanted one. So when Daniel and Sarah got engaged, I promised myself I would give them everything I had. My time, my hands, my heart, to make their wedding and their new life together beautiful. First, it was little things. Sarah would call me and say, "Linda, could you help me with the seating chart?" Or, "Linda, would you mind coming by to taste the cake flavors with us?" And I would go, smiling, happy to be included. But as the months went by, the requests grew bigger. "Linda, could you sew the table runners for the reception? It would save us so much money." "Linda, could you come over this weekend and help clean the new house before we move in?" "Linda, you're so good at cooking. Maybe you could handle the appetizers for the rehearsal dinner?" And I said yes. Always yes. My hands ached at night from stitching fabric. My back hurt from scrubbing floors. I stayed up late baking, packaging, and labeling dishes, just so things would be perfect. But when I saw Daniel smile when Sarah said, "You're a lifesaver," I felt it was worth it. That's what I kept telling myself. It's worth it because this is love. Still, there were moments when I felt invisible. I remember one Saturday afternoon. I was standing in their kitchen, flour on my apron, hair tied back, while Sarah and her bridesmaids laughed in the living room, sipping wine and trying on dresses. Daniel was there too, laughing with them. I was close enough to hear the joy, but not close enough to be part of it. I looked down at the dough I was rolling out for the pies, and a small thought slipped into my mind. Am I a mother here, or just the help? But I pushed that thought away, telling myself it was silly. Family helps family. That's what I had always believed. As the wedding drew closer, my days were filled with endless tasks. My calendar looked like it belonged to a young working woman, not a 72-year-old widow. There were dress fittings, tasting appointments, flower arrangements, last-minute errands, and countless phone calls at all hours. Sometimes I would sit on my porch in the evenings with my best friend Mary. She's been by my side since high school, through thick and thin. She would shake her head at me and say, "Linda, you need to slow down. You're running yourself ragged." And I would laugh, though it sounded more tired than joyful. "It's for Daniel," I'd say. "I don't mind." Mary would give me that look, half concern, half disbelief, and sip her tea. Just remember, honey, even good hearts can break if people take too much from them. Her words stayed with me, but I brushed them off. I told myself this was just part of being a mother, part of being needed. The week before the wedding, I barely slept. Every morning, I woke before sunrise, making lists, double-checking details, fielding calls from vendors who got my number instead of Sarah's. My house looked like a workshop. Fabric scraps on the couch, baking trays cooling on the counter, and flower petals scattered everywhere. And yet, not once did anyone ask me how I was holding up. Not Daniel. Not Sarah. I wanted to believe they were just too busy, too stressed, too caught up in the wedding whirlwind to notice. That had to be it. They loved me, didn't they? They respected me. Surely they did. Then came the moment that changed everything. It was the night before the wedding rehearsal. I had stopped by Daniel and Sarah's house to drop off a batch of homemade cookies for the bridal party. The door was half open, and as I stepped inside, I heard laughter coming from the living room. Sarah's voice. Her sister's voice. "She'll do it. She always does," Sarah said, her tone dripping with confidence. Her sister giggled. "You're lucky, girl. Not everyone gets a free maid with their marriage." Sarah laughed harder. "I know. Can you believe it? I don't even have to ask politely anymore. Just hint and she's there ready to cook or clean. Honestly, it's kind of sad. But hey, works out for us." Their laughter echoed in my ears, sharp as knives. I stood there frozen, the cookie tin trembling in my hands. My chest felt tight, my eyes stung, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. Was that really how they saw me? Not as a mother. Not as family. Just as free labor. Just as kind of sad. I quietly set the cookies down on the counter, walked out of the house, and sat in my car for a long time, staring at the steering wheel. For the first time in 72 years, I felt truly empty. That night, as I lay awake in my bed, Mary's words echoed in my head again. Even good hearts can break if people take too much from them. And I realized, mine had just broken. This is where my story truly begins. Because what I chose to do after that moment would change not only my life, but my family's as well. And it all started with a word I had never allowed myself to say before. The word no. The morning of Daniel's wedding should have been the happiest day of my life. I should have been waking up with excitement, laying out a dress, fixing my hair, maybe even shedding a few tears of joy as I thought about seeing my only son walk down the aisle to begin his new life. But instead, I woke up with a heaviness in my chest, a storm in my mind, and a word on my lips that I had never spoken to Daniel before. No. I sat on the edge of my bed, the Colorado sun rising over the mountains outside my window, and I whispered it again, louder this time. No. For 72 years, I had been the woman who always said yes. Yes to extra work, yes to late nights, yes to sacrificing my own comfort so others could be happy. But last night, standing outside that living room door, listening to Sarah and her sister mock me, something inside me cracked. I realized that if I went to that wedding, if I kept cooking and cleaning and giving, I would be telling them it was okay to treat me that way. I would be agreeing to live the rest of my years as invisible. And I couldn't do it. Not anymore. I picked up the phone and dialed my best friend Mary. She answered on the second ring. "Linda, what's wrong? You sound shaky." "Mary." My voice trembled, but I steadied myself. "I'm not going to the wedding." There was a pause, then a sharp intake of breath. "What? Linda, are you sure?" "I can't do it, Mary. I heard them last night. I heard how they see me. They don't see me as family. They see me as a maid, as free labor. And if I go today, if I stand there smiling and serving like always, then I'll be proving them right. I need to stop. I need to finally say no." Mary was silent for a moment, then she spoke, her voice full of both sadness and pride. "You know this is going to cause a storm, right?" "I know," I whispered. "But I'd rather face a storm with dignity than live in silence without it. So instead of putting on a wedding dress and pearls, I packed a small bag." Mary drove me 2 hours out of town to a quiet spa retreat in the mountains. It was the kind of place with hot springs, soft music, and cabins that smelled like pine. A place where people went to heal. When I checked in, the woman at the front desk smiled and asked, "Are you here for relaxation or celebration?" I smiled back, though my eyes were wet. "Both," I said softly. "In my own way, both." As I sank into the warm mineral waters that afternoon, the weight on my shoulders lifted for the first time in years. My body, tired from months of work, finally rested. My heart, bruised from words I wasn't supposed to hear, began to steady. For the first time in my life, I wasn't running to meet someone else's needs. I was sitting still just for me. Meanwhile, back in Denver, the wedding chaos was unfolding. At first, people didn't notice I wasn't there. Guests mingled, music played, the ceremony began. Daniel stood at the altar, his smile wide as Sarah walked down the aisle in her white gown. But by the time the reception started, the cracks began to show. There was no food prepared. No carefully baked appetizers waiting on the tables. No neatly wrapped snacks for the children running around. The caterer had only been hired for the main meal, not the extras. Guests grew restless, whispering. The children cried, pulling at their parents' clothes, hungry and bored. Relatives muttered about how poorly things were organized. "Where's Linda?" people began to ask. Didn't she always handle things like this? My phone started buzzing nonstop in my purse. Text after text. Call after call. From Daniel, "Mom, where are you?" "Everyone's asking." From Sarah, "This isn't funny. You're ruining everything." From relatives, "Linda, please come. The kids are screaming. There's no food. Daniel is upset." I turned my phone face down and let the screen go dark. For once, I wasn't going to run to fix everything. Later that night, Mary and I sat by a crackling fire outside the cabin. The stars stretched endless above us, brighter than I'd ever seen them in the city. "Do you regret it?" Mary asked gently. I thought about the children crying, the whispers at the reception, the anger in Daniel's texts. Then I thought about the laughter I had heard the night before, Sarah's words echoing in my ears. "She'll do it. She always does." And I shook my head. No, I don't regret it. Because today, for the first time in my life, I chose myself. But the storm wasn't over. The next morning, as I sipped coffee on the porch of the cabin, my phone rang again. It was Daniel. I hesitated, then answered. "Mom." His voice was tight with anger. "How could you? You embarrassed me in front of everyone. Do you know what people were saying last night? They said our wedding was a mess, that it looked unprepared. All because you weren't there." Tears pricked my eyes, but I held my voice steady. "Daniel, I am your mother, not your servant. I have given, and I've been grateful to do it. But last night I heard Sarah and her sister. I heard how they really see me. And I realized I've been hurting myself just to keep everyone else happy. I couldn't do it anymore." There was silence on the line. Then Daniel's voice, cold and distant. "You ruined my wedding, Mom. You ruined it." The call ended with a click. I sat there for a long time, the phone heavy in my hand. Mary reached over, squeezing my arm. "You didn't ruin anything, Linda. You saved yourself. And one day, Daniel will see that." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that my son, my only child, would one day understand that I didn't leave because I stopped loving him. I left because I finally started loving myself. And so, while the wedding faded into memory, my new life was just beginning. A life where my yes would mean something again, because it would be a choice, not an obligation. A life where my dignity would not be traded for crumbs of appreciation. But I also knew this choice came with consequences. My son was hurt. My daughter-in-law was angry. And the road ahead would not be smooth. Still, as I watched the sunrise over the Colorado mountains, I whispered a quiet prayer. "God, give me strength. Help them see my heart, not just their anger. And help me keep walking this new path, even when it's lonely." Because sometimes, the hardest thing a mother can do is let her child be angry at her, if it means teaching him a lesson about respect. The wedding came and went without me, but the storm it left behind was louder than the church bells in Denver that day. By the time I returned home from the mountain spa, My voicemail was full. My phone had so many unread messages that the screen froze when I tried to scroll. Everyone had something to say. Some messages were angry. "How could you embarrass your son like that, Linda? You made the whole family look bad. Sarah is in tears. You should apologize." Some were confused. "Are you sick? Why didn't you come? We thought something happened to you. Was it an accident?" And only a few were understanding. "Linda, you did the right thing. Don't let them guilt you. You deserve peace." It was strange, really. For so long I had been invisible, the woman who worked quietly in the background. But the moment I stopped, the whole family seemed to finally notice me, though not for the reasons I had hoped. Few days later, Daniel showed up at my house. He didn't knock gently like he used to. He banged on the door, his face red with anger when I opened it. "Mom, we need to talk." I let him in, my heart heavy. He paced the living room like a storm ready to break. "You humiliated me," he said. "Do you know what people were saying? That we weren't prepared. That it was messy. Everyone was asking where you were." Sarah's parents were furious. I sat on the couch, hands folded in my lap. "Daniel, I didn't want to hurt you. But I had to make a choice. I overheard Sarah and her sister the night before the rehearsal. I heard what they said about me. That I was just free labor. That it was sad how I always said yes. And in that moment, I realized they didn't see me as family. They saw me as a servant. And I couldn't go to that wedding pretending everything was fine." Daniel stopped pacing. His mouth opened then closed. He rubbed the back of his neck, avoiding my eyes. You misunderstood. Sarah didn't mean it like that." "Daniel," I said softly, "I know what I heard. And even if she didn't mean it that way, the truth is, that's how I've been treated. You've both expected me to give and give until I had nothing left. And I let it happen because I love you. But love without respect isn't love. It's sacrifice. And I've been sacrificing myself for too long." His jaw tightened. "So you punish me. On my wedding day." Tears filled my eyes. "No, I didn't punish you. I protected myself. And maybe, just maybe, I gave you a lesson you needed to learn. That respect matters more than convenience." He left angry that night, slamming the door behind him. And I sat alone in my quiet house, the ticking of the clock on the wall the only sound. Part of me wanted to run after him, to apologize, to take it all back. That's what I had always done before. But another part of me, stronger now, kept me seated. That part whispered no more. "You are not just a mother. You are a person who deserves respect." Word spread through the family like wildfire. Some relatives called me brave. Others called me selfish. At church, whispers followed me down the aisle. Some said, "Poor Linda, she's lost her son." Others muttered, "She should have swallowed her pride for his big day." Hurt. Oh, how it hurt. But when I prayed at night, I asked God to give me strength to endure it. I asked Him to help Daniel see the truth in time. A week later there was a knock on my door. This time it wasn't Daniel. It was Elena, my sister-in-law, Charles's younger sister. She stepped inside with a sigh and hugged me tight. "Linda, I want you to know something. I admire what you did." I blinked at her, surprised. "You do?" "Yes," she said firmly. "I was at that wedding. And let me tell you, the whispers weren't all against you. Some people said it was about time you stood up for yourself. They've seen how much you've carried. They know you've been doing the work of 10 people while Sarah's family sat back. Some of us, me included, we've been too quiet about it. But we see you, Linda. We always have." Her words were like balm on a wound. For the first time since the wedding, I didn't feel completely alone. But the real test came 2 weeks later, when Sarah herself appeared at my door. I opened it to find her standing there, looking tired, her makeup smudged from crying. "Can we talk?" she asked softly. I hesitated, then nodded. She sat at my kitchen table, fidgeting with her hands. For a long moment she didn't speak. Then finally she whispered, "I'm sorry." I studied her face, trying to read the sincerity in her eyes. For what, Sarah? For what I said. That night with my sister. You weren't supposed to hear it, but I said it anyway. And it was cruel. Tears welled in her eyes. The truth is, I didn't know how to handle having you around so much. You were so good at everything. Cooking, organizing, keeping Daniel calm. I felt like I couldn't compete with you. Like maybe Daniel didn't even need me. So instead of being grateful, I made jokes. I tried to make myself feel better by putting you down. And it was wrong. Her words stunned me. I had expected excuses, maybe anger, but not this raw confession. Sarah, I said gently, I never wanted to compete with you. I only wanted to love you. But love without respect doesn't work. I need you to see me as a mother, not as someone to use. She nodded quickly, wiping her tears. I do see that now. And I want to do better. If you'll let me. For the first time since the wedding, hope flickered in my heart. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about everything that had happened. The pain, the anger, the storm that my no had caused. But also, the tiny shoots of change beginning to grow in the cracks. Daniel wasn't there yet. He was still angry, still wounded. But Sarah's apology. That was a start. And sometimes all you need is a start. The weeks after Sarah's apology felt like the first hints of spring after a long Colorado winter. The snow hadn't melted yet. The air was still sharp and cold. But here and there you could see green buds breaking through. Sarah began reaching out to me more gently, differently than before. Instead of demanding, she asked, Linda, would you like to come over for dinner this week? No cooking, I promise. Daniel and I want to cook for you. Or, would you be interested in helping me with a recipe? Only if you feel like it. I'd love to learn from you. It was small, but it mattered. For the first time I felt like I had a choice. And when I said yes, it came from my heart, not from guilt. Daniel, on the other hand, was still distant. Whenever I saw him, his words were short, his hugs stiff. He was polite, but cold, like a man trying to protect himself from disappointment. I wanted to reach for him to fix it, but I reminded myself, I wasn't responsible for carrying his feelings anymore. He had to walk his own road toward understanding. And slowly he did. It happened one Saturday afternoon when he came to my house unannounced. He stood at the door, not angry this time, just tired. Can I come in? He asked. I nodded, leading him to the living room where we sat across from each other, the silence heavy between us. Finally he spoke. Sarah told me what she said. What you heard. Sorry, Mom. I should have defended you that night. I should have seen how much you were doing, how much I was asking of you. I treated you like an employee, not like a mother. His voice broke a little. I was so wrapped up in the wedding, in making everything perfect, that I forgot who made everything possible. And I hurt you. Tears filled my eyes as I reached across the table, taking his hand. Daniel, I never stopped loving you. But I needed you to see me. Not as your helper. As your mother. As a woman who still has worth beyond what she can do for you. He squeezed my hand. I see it now. I really do. From that day forward, something shifted in Daniel. He didn't call me for every little thing anymore. When he and Sarah invited me over, it wasn't with a list of chores waiting. It was to sit at the table, to share a meal, to laugh together. For the first time in years I felt included, not because I was useful but because I was loved. But the most surprising change came from Sarah. She began calling me not just for wedding-related things but for life. Linda, I had a rough day at work. Can we talk? Linda, I found this recipe for peach cobbler. Do you think we could make it together? She even asked me to show her how to sew, something I hadn't done for anyone since Daniel was little. Little by little our relationship grew. Not perfect, not overnight, but real. During this time I also started to rediscover myself. For years my life had been about serving others. But now, with a little space and dignity restored, I began to ask, what did I want? The answer came one afternoon when Mary and I were sitting on my porch with cups of coffee. Linda, she said suddenly, you've got boxes of recipes stacked in your kitchen. Some of those you've had since high school. Why don't you write them down properly? Make a book out of them. You've got the stories, the wisdom, the experience. People would read it. I laughed at first, waving her off. Me? Write a book? I'm too old for that. Mary leaned forward, her eyes sharp. You're 72, not gone. You just stood up to your whole family at a wedding. Don't tell me you don't have the courage to write a cookbook. Her words planted a seed. And for the first time in a long while I let myself imagine it. Book. My recipes. My stories. My voice. Not for anyone else, not because someone needed it, but because I wanted it. As weeks turned into months, that seed grew. I began writing in the mornings, the Colorado sunlight spilling through my kitchen window as I scribbled down recipes for cornbread, apple pie, and chicken stew. But alongside the recipes, I added reflections. Little lessons about life, about boundaries, about dignity. One page might read, "Cooking is like love, it should be given freely, not demanded. If someone expects your service but doesn't respect your heart, the meal will always taste bitter." The more I wrote, the more alive I felt. Then, one evening at dinner, Daniel and Sarah gave me unexpected news. "Mom," Daniel said, smiling nervously, "we have something to tell you." I looked between them, noticing Sarah's hand resting gently on her stomach. Gasp. "You're expecting?" Sarah nodded, tears in her eyes. "Yes. We're going to have a baby." My heart swelled with joy. For a moment I thought I might cry right there at the table. But then Sarah reached across, taking my hand. "Linda, I want you to know something. We would love for you to be part of our baby's life. But only in the way you want to be. No pressure, no expectations. You've given us so much already. This time we want to honor your choice." Her words struck me deeper than she could have known. Because for the first time they weren't asking for what I could do. They were asking for what I wanted. And that made all the difference. That night, as I drove home under the Colorado stars, I thought about everything I had lost and gained since the wedding. I had lost the image of being the perfect, always giving mother. I had lost the illusion that sacrifice was the same as love. But I had gained something far more precious: respect, dignity, and the chance to live the rest of my life not as a shadow, but as myself. And as I pulled into my driveway, I whispered to the quiet night, "Thank you, God. Thank you for giving me the strength to say no." Because that no had opened the door to everything I truly needed. Life has a way of surprising you, especially when you've lived long enough to think nothing can surprise you anymore. When I turned 73, I celebrated quietly with Mary at a little cafe in downtown Denver. No big party, no fuss. Just the two of us sipping lattes and sharing a slice of carrot cake. But I'll never forget what Mary told me that day. She leaned across the table, her eyes twinkling, and said, "Linda, you're just getting started. Don't you dare act like your story is over. You've still got chapters left to write." At the time I laughed. But those words, chapters left to write, they stayed with me. By then I had been working on my cookbook for almost a year. What started as scribbles in a notebook had grown into a thick stack of pages. Recipes for biscuits, soups, pies. Each one tied to a memory, a lesson, a piece of my heart. I sent the manuscript to a small publisher in Colorado Springs, never expecting much. But to my shock they loved it. A few months later, I held the first printed copy of my book in my hands. The cover read, "Seasons of the Table. Recipes and Reflections from a Life Well Lived, by Linda Parker." My hands trembled as I turned the pages. There were my recipes, my stories, my words. For the first time in decades, I wasn't just someone's mother or someone's helper. I was an author, a woman with something of her own to share with the world. Meanwhile, Daniel and Sarah's baby grew steadily. When the day finally came, I was in the waiting room at the hospital, pacing the floor like I was 20 again. Then Daniel burst through the doors, tears streaming down his face. "It's a girl, Mom," he said, his voice breaking. "Her name is Grace." Grace. The moment I held her in my arms, I felt something shift inside me. This tiny baby, with her perfect little hands and sleepy eyes, had no demands, no judgments. She simply existed and she was loved. And as I rocked her, I whispered softly, "You will always know your worth, Grace. You will always know that love doesn't mean losing yourself." In the months that followed, my life blossomed in ways I never expected. Daniel and Sarah invited me over often, not to cook or clean, but to simply be grandma. I would sit on the couch with Grace in my arms while Sarah brought me tea. Sometimes, Daniel would lean his head against my shoulder the way he used to when he was little. The respect between us had grown roots. And this time it was real. But the greatest moment came one summer afternoon, when my publisher hosted a small book signing in Boulder. I sat at a table in a little bookstore, pen in hand, with a line of strangers waiting to meet me. Some came for the recipes, but many told me they came for the reflections, those little notes about dignity, love, and setting boundaries. One woman even grabbed my hand with tears in her eyes and said, "Your story saved me. I've been giving and giving for years, and I forgot who I was. Reading your words reminded me I'm worth more than what I do for others." Her words filled me with a warmth so deep, it was almost overwhelming. Because that was it. That was the reason I had lived through the pain, the rejection, the long nights of tears. So that maybe, just maybe, my story could give someone else the courage to stand up and say, "I deserve respect too." That night, after the signing, Daniel and Sarah came with baby Grace to celebrate. Daniel raised his glass of sparkling cider and said, "To Mom, the strongest woman I know. Thank you for teaching me what respect really means. I'm proud to be your son." I felt tears spill down my cheeks as I looked around that table. My son, my daughter-in-law, my granddaughter. My book in my bag. My best friend Mary by my side. For the first time in a very long time I felt whole. And so, if you ask me now what I've learned, I would say this. Life will test you. Sometimes it will break you down so far, you'll wonder if you have anything left to give. But if you can find the courage to say no when no is needed, if you can protect your worth even when it feels selfish, you will discover something incredible. You will discover that love rooted in respect is stronger, sweeter, and more lasting than love rooted in sacrifice. Today, when I walk into Daniel and Sarah's home, they greet me not with lists of things to do, but with open arms. Grace runs into my legs shouting, "Grandma!" And Sarah always smiles warmly, pulling me into a hug. I'm not their servant. I'm not their doormat. I am their mother. I am their family. I am myself. And that, my friends, is the greatest gift of all.